with my great friend Michael Massie of Martial Arts Business Daily. So I was just telling Mike off camera, I just lost my notes. So but we decided to just go with the flow, as they say. And so here's the thing. I've known Mike for many years. He is one of the most intelligent and one of the kindest human beings that I know. And he's not a JKD guy per se, even though he is represented. All right. But if you think that there's nothing for you to learn from a non-JKD guy, then you're the idiot. So Michael Massie, welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues.
Thanks, Sam. I'm pleased to be here. And I had to represent because I will say I have practiced JKD on and off for years with several different instructors. And locally here in Austin, Guru Ray Para, who I trained with on and off for a couple of years. And then, of course, with Burton Richardson, Sifu Burton Richardson, who I started studying his materials back in the mid 2000s and have trained with them, had the opportunity to train with them a couple of times in person, and just wonderful. Got to spend a week with them a couple of years ago in Hawaii, and it was one of the best training experiences of my life. So if I looked to anybody in Jeet Kune to be my Sifu now, it would be Sifu Burton Richardson.
And I saw I think photographs of you. You went to a Chris Kent thing at Forrest Cowdell's place as well.
Yeah. So Forrest, he worked for me for a couple of years. We were friends before that. And he worked for me for a couple of years in a studio I had in North Austin. He ended up purchasing that studio from me, taking it over when I wanted to move on and do other things. And, Forrest, outstanding technician, just outstanding JKD technician and martial artist, period. Really proud to know that guy. And I kept encouraging him to bring Sifu Chris Kent down. I'm like, I want to meet him, bring him down for a second. So he finally did. And I got to train with him. It was a great weekend. Yeah. He was fun to talk to because his stories were like par excellence, right? And he had the best stories, and he's a really super nice guy. Plus, there's something to be said for someone who an instructor who's is a senior instructor, right? Who is like has a level of mastery and skill and knowledge from decades of training that comes in and demonstrates everything they teach.
Yeah.
And that really impressed me, and it was a great weekend.
Yeah. Okay. So I apologize. You're a JKD guy. You're deep into it.
And the thing is that I teach, so I mostly teach Krav Maga now, right? But I teach Krav Maga that's very heavily influenced by Jeet Kune because what Krav, and I got into Krav like 7-8 years ago. I just got my black belt presented to me by my friend Tom Whitaker. Who's a good friend of mine. We grew up together, did Shotokan karate together in high school. But he presented with my black belt last weekend, I guess, weekend before last. And that was after 8 years of training in Krav Maga. But the Krav Maga that I teach is very heavily influenced by Jeet Kune simply because what Krav does for me is it gives me what Jeet Kune does for a lot of people. It gives me a structure or I guess you could say kind of like I don't know, a vehicle for doing all the things that I like to do. So things that I felt were missing in my martial arts practice because of some personal experiences I had were how to deal with firearms, dealing with edged weapons. And I will say, you get edged weapons training like Sifu Bert stuff is, it's phenomenal. And I use a lot of his material instead of some of the Krav Maga techniques. I know that's going to hack off some Krav Maga people out there, but I do. And then also situational training, situational awareness, and doing things like what do you do if you're carjackings and things like that. And there are things that are addressed in Krav Maga that I think perhaps there can be there's a lot of criticism that can be leveled at Krav Maga, rightfully so, but at least Krav Maga instructors out there are addressing these things. They're actively trying to address them. I'm not talking about commercial Krav Maga. I got tired of the commercial Krav Maga scene a long time ago. Most of the people I train with are, they either travel to Israel and train on a regular basis with military and civilian instructors over there, or they're military instructors that I've trained with, like Nir Maiman, who is also phenomenal. He's friends with Sifu Bert. Krav Maga just gives me a vehicle to practice all those things that I like to do, and I've always had a heart for Jeet Kune. One of the first, when I was like 13, 14 years old, when I first got into martial arts, a friend of mine gifted me these books, and we were just over at his house and we were playing around, you know, like kids do on his guitar, you know, playing guitar. You know, we thought we were rockers. That was back when I had hair. And I looked on his bookshelf and I said, "Oh man, you've got the Tao of Jeet Kune over there and Bruce Lee's fighting method." He's like, "Oh yeah, you know what? Just take those books." So he just gave them to me, you know, and to me it was like a treasure. You know, I have those books to this day. They're sitting on my shelf over here somewhere. I think I've only got 3 of the original 4 Bruce Lee's fighting method books because one of them fell apart. But, and you know, and I was kind of weaned on that stuff. Even though I was doing traditional martial arts, I was doing traditional Shotokan karate and traditional Changmukan Taekwondo. And then later I got to train some full contact kickboxing in Denver, Colorado with a guy named Mike Jones. I think he used to go by Super Kick was his ring name, but he was, I want to say, a WKA super light heavyweight champion or WKA light heavyweight champion, I believe in '85, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. And I got to train with him for like 4 months. And it was, you know, that kind of opened my eyes up to full contact training. And that's when I really kind of started wanting to get more into Jeet Kune and started seeking out seminars, instructors through seminars and such.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you guys, how much is in what Mike just said over the last few minutes, right? So I'm going to go back to something you said at the beginning, Chris and his stories, right? And the reason why I bring that up is because one of my first questions, I know I wrote this down, right? As soon as Microsoft Word repairs itself, one of my questions for you was, how does one become a writer?
Okay.
Right? Because in case you guys are not aware, let me show you something. This is one reason, Michael, why I love to use the do you see it? Yeah. Okay. Right. So it's not a big enough graphic for you guys here, but here's what I encourage you guys to do. Go to Amazon.com and type in the Kindle section, type in Michael Massie, and that's where you will see, if I remember correctly, there are 7 or 8 titles in martial arts.
I think there's probably, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but there's a whole series up there that I wrote. And the funny thing about this series is you asked me, how do you become a writer? So I'm going to tell you, but the reason why I wrote those books is because I had written, I'm going to go back a little bit in my history. So I ran a full-time martial arts studio for about 10 years from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, right? Actually early 90s to early 2000s. And then I sold it to a training partner of mine who had been ripped from the tech industry, and he had gotten a rather large, separation, like I forget what they call it, but he got a rather large
severance.
Yeah, severance. There you go, severance. So, he offered to buy my studio and he was able to pay for it cash. So he purchased it from me. I was wanting to get out of it at the time. I was having some health issues. And all of a sudden I went from working, 60, 80 hours a week to just sitting on my hands at home. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I had some experiences over the previous few years with the mainstream martial arts business industry that were very distasteful to me. It left a very bad taste in my mouth. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a business manual for martial arts school owners that don't want all that mainstream stuff, that they're not looking to follow the big school. There it is. Yeah. They're not looking to follow the big school dream and all that stuff. I wanted to write.
I hope you appreciate being in Austin, Texas. I hope you appreciate how I'm quite like Joe Rogan, with knowing when to feed stuff in.
That's awesome. I love it. So I wrote that book, and it took me about 3 months of writing every day. And, I wasn't really accustomed to writing on a daily basis. I didn't have a daily writing discipline at that time. And writing is a lot like martial arts. You need to have a daily discipline. And the stronger your daily discipline is, the stronger your practice is, the stronger your execution is. And so I developed it over that time, wrote that book, and then thought about taking it to a couple of traditional publishers. I thought about approaching like Tuttle and some of the other publishers that publish martial arts. And I realized it was so niche and also so angry. The tone of the book is really angry that I was like, it's too controversial. Nobody's ever going to publish this. So I self-published it. And this was before Amazon, Kindle, and all that stuff, and developed kind of an underground following. And then people started coming back to me, asking me more questions. They would purchase my book and say, You know, what do I do about this? What do I do about this? What's the next step
Right.
after this? And so then I wrote the other books. And the way that I wrote the other books was the second book I wrote after Small Dojo Big Profits was the Profit Boosting Principles. And I wrote that one just like I wrote Small Dojo Big Profits. I just sat down at my desk and wrote. And then after that, what I started doing is I started blogging on Martial Arts Business Daily, and I started writing a weekly newsletter. So I used the newsletter and the blog to actually blog the other books. So
Right.
what I would do is I would do like a newsletter series for a period of weeks, and each newsletter each week, or for a while there, I was doing it daily when I was really trying to crank out books, would be a chapter or a subchapter in the book, and that's how I did it.
Ah,
So that's really how I developed the daily writing discipline.
okay. So then that also is how one becomes a consultant.
I fell backwards into that because I
Ah,
had no intention of doing any of that stuff. And what I found is after I wrote Small Dojo Big Profits, which is an ironic name for a book that was supposed to be about the heart of teaching, the heart of martial arts, you know, business, which is teaching. But
right.
you know, I had to have a catchy title, so forgive me. But the thing about consulting is that anybody can put up a shingle and be a consultant, right? Or say they're a consultant.
Mhm.
And I didn't want that that moniker, you know, attached to me. But you have to do it anyway, because if you're going to market yourself as a coach for people, a business coach, you have to tell people I do consulting work. And I fell into it backwards because people were coming to me and asking me for help, and I was helping people. And then all of a sudden, I found out, you know, here I am trying to run a school. I was on my second school at that time,
Right.
and I'm spending 20 hours a week helping people for free. And I realized that that was not sustainable, and I had to start charging for it. So the first thing I did was I started. This was back during the day. I started an online forum. This is in the days of martial arts forums, right? And I had like a monthly fee for it. It was like a nominal fee or something like that. We had a bunch of people there, and people would join the forum and they would get information from me every month. And you know, I think at that time I had a graphic designer working for me, providing ads and marketing materials and stuff. And
Mhm.
we had some people that went from, you know, struggling to running, you know, successful small dojo big profit style schools, which
Right.
I define as, you know, anywhere from 150 to 250 students, you know, a small footprint school, no more than 4,000 square feet, and you know, profiting six figures a year. So
Mhm.
that's what we defined as the ideal small to big profit school, and it's worked for a lot of instructors out there. It's not for everybody. I understand that some people out there would rather have 300, 600, 1,000 students
Right.
and have, you know, 6,000 to 10,000 square feet. I understand that, and I don't knock that at all.
Right.
I'm not against that at all. If that's somebody's dream, then they should pursue that. But that's what I defined, and that's what we did in that forum, and people had success with it, and then kind of went on from there. It kind of evolved from there. So.
So big dojo is not automatically small profits then.
No, but often it is though, and that's something that's not talked about very often in the martial arts business industry. I think that, and I'm not saying people out there purposely trying to deceive other people. I don't want to speak poorly about other instructors or consultants or knock people who are preaching and teaching something different than what I teach, because that's not what we do. But what I will say is that many times I think that martial arts instructors who have not been around the mainstream of the industry and have not, you know, spent time after hours with instructors and hanging out at their studios and, you know, maybe knocking back a couple of beers and, you know, in vino veritas, you know, that type of thing, you know, experiencing that part of the industry. I think that people are given the impression through media and social media, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
that big martial arts studios are making a killing. And oftentimes they're not, you know. There was a very famous instructor who was known for building very large martial arts studios, who had a school that was well over 1,000 students and was famed for that, and eventually became, you know, very well known for that. And, you know, we all thought that that person was, you know, making a killing in that studio. And then come to find out, you know, their profit margins were very, very slim in that studio because their overhead was so high.
Right.
You know, even though they had over 1,000 students in that studio, their profit margins were apparently very, very slim. And apparently, after they sold that studio, the studio didn't last very long because it was an unsustainable business model.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that you can't make a killing with 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 students in a single location. Obviously you can, because the cash flow on a place like that is insane.
Yeah.
But there's I think it's much more difficult to do, because you got to understand the difference between running a 150 student school and a 1,000 student school is night and day. The business systems and the type of person you have to be able to run that large organization is completely different. I mean, you have to have completely different business skills. You have to have a completely different focus in your business. You have to develop skills that the average person simply doesn't have.
Right.
You have to be a business manager, and there's nothing wrong with being a business manager or being the type of martial artist that that is better in the office than they are on the floor.
Mhm.
That's just the way it is for some people, and some people like that. And there's nothing wrong with that either, I don't think. I think if you're a fine martial artist, but a better business owner, and you're okay with hiring great instructors to go out on the floor and teach for you while you manage your school as a business, so you can, be involved in a business that is, something that you love to do versus, just running a business or having a job that you hate. I don't think
Right.
there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
So,
But in the early days, a lot of people figured, well, I'm pretty talented. I'll open up a school and start teaching.
yeah,
Right.
it's that technician mindset. There's people who have read the E-Myth, which is a book that's been around for a while, written by Michael Gerber. But he talks about that. He talks about how a lot of people that go out and open small businesses are technicians. They're not business owners. They're not business minded.
Right.
And so most of us are technicians. We love training martial arts, teaching martial arts, and sharing it with others. But we haven't developed the business skills necessary to be successful at running a studio, a dojo, a kwoon.
Yeah.
So, many times martial artists that go out and start businesses, start martial arts schools, they get in over their heads.
Are you screwed today if you don't open up an MMA or a BJJ or a Krav Maga facility?
I don't think so. No, because there are people out there that are, that are doing well teaching traditional martial arts still. You just have to understand your market, and you have to understand that the market has shifted for, in my opinion, this is just my opinion now, but that the market has shifted for traditional martial arts, because we live in an age where people are they're more informed than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And in many cases, more misinformed than they've ever been. But that's a topic for another discussion.
Right.
But anybody can go out there on the internet and they can research anything on their phone, within seconds, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, people will go out and they'll research, what is the best style for X, and let's face it, the majority of people that come to martial arts training, people come to martial arts training for a few different reasons. One of them is exercise, but they want a different form of exercise. They want something that is unique, that's different from what they've been doing at the gym. But people do come to martial arts training to get in shape. The second one is for something that's fun to do. They're looking for entertainment and maybe possibly to do something that's new and novel in a social environment. And then number three, for self-defense. And I list self-defense third because what I found in polling people that came to my martial arts studios over the years, that self-defense was usually listed secondary or tertiarily. That they would list that as not necessarily their primary reason, but it was still important to them. And that's why they came to a martial arts studio versus going and, I don't know, taking an aerobics class or something.
Right.
But the thing is people will go research and say, what's the best martial art for self-defense? And what are they going to find? They're going to be told, well, if you want to learn how to fight, do MMA or do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or in some cases, some people will say Krav Maga, though, there's a big argument against whether Krav Maga is effective for self-defense. I won't get into that. Yeah. But that's what they're gonna find on Google. And so that's what they're going to go toward. They're going to go for those systems if they're looking for self-defense. And, me personally, yeah, you're going to learn how to fight. You go to practice MMA, you go take a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class in a school where, they're not just focused on sport, where they also still do self-defense training and where, they're not just, spinning around the floor doing breakdancing, but they're actually practicing some of the core techniques of old school self-defense jiu-jitsu that worked in Vale Tudo matches, 40, 50 years ago. And you're going to learn how to fight. You're going to be good at single combat. Yeah. So I think that traditional martial arts have lost that mystique. They've lost that appeal because everybody's seen the UFC. People don't see people in gis and pajamas jumping around, fighting, like this and winning UFC matches. Well, there's a couple of fighters that have done that, but we all also know that they cross-trained in other martial arts and they adapted their traditional martial arts heavily to be successful in MMA.
So, okay, so a number of things come out of your comments. But I want to ask you this specifically.
Yeah.
Going to a room of 100 people and 90 of them, or even more, perhaps 99 of them, they know the name Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Only one person, or maybe even none of them, know that Bruce Lee was a real martial artist and that he founded his own method.
Sadly, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, well, I think that Jeet Kune on the whole has not been great at marketing itself. And that's my take. I don't think that Jeet Kune instructors, Jeet Kune stylists, I don't think they've been really good at marketing themselves outside of the martial arts industry, at marketing themselves to the mainstream media. And, it's interesting to me that is the case, because so often in Hollywood, when you look at movies and you're like, okay, so who was the fight consultant or the fight coordinator on this movie?
Yeah.
Somebody with a JKD background. Somebody with a JKD and Kali background.
I am so glad you're saying that, because I've said that and nobody listens to me. I am so glad you're saying now they'll listen.
Yeah, it's true. And the thing is that where do most of them come from? The vast majority of them come out of the Inosano Academy. So but it's unfortunate, because you see a lot of fight choreography coming out of Hollywood that is Jeet Kune based, right? It's either Filipino martial arts based or it's Jeet Kune based. But yet at the same time, because JKD is so fragmented, not just politically. I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but structurally speaking, it's so fragmented because, there are so many different, branches of JKD, because, what's everybody doing? Well, everybody's, finding their own JKD. And I guess that, that causes the type of situation where everybody's doing their own thing and nobody's really working together to kind of market, their, the art to the masses.
So on my way to my private client today, I noticed that the Powerball is 222 million. So let's say I won that, and I come to you and I go, Mike, I want you to help me fix the marketing in Jeet Kune.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
What's the first step we take?
Yeah. Hire a really good PR firm. Well, let's back up and let's look at what happened when Krav Maga came on the scene. Okay, so we'll get into a little bit of Krav Maga history here. So Darren Levine is a guy who was he was an attorney, an assistant district attorney, I think, in Los Angeles, and he had gotten certified under Emmy Lichtenfeld, who many people see as the founder of Krav Maga, which he actually wasn't. He was the founder of civilian Krav Maga. He created civilian Krav Maga, but Krav Maga was actually created by several different instructors over a period of time in Israel and the Israeli military. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. Not taking anything away from Emmy, because he was a fantastic person and martial artist, and obviously was a founder in Krav Maga.
Right.
But Darren Levine and several other people got certified here in the United States from a course that Emmy taught way back in the day. And I think perhaps Darren saw the potential in marketing Krav Maga to the civilian sector here in the United States. So he did a couple of things that were really smart. One of the things he did was he actually trademarked Krav Maga. And he held that trademark for many years until a group of Israeli instructors challenged him in court and actually, won the rights for everyone to use Krav Maga, because it's a common term. It basically is just used like self-defense in Israel, right? So, but he held the trademark on it for a long time, and nobody could say they taught Krav Maga in the United States unless they were a member of his organization. He was also very good at finding people to teach who were influencers. And he taught many, many people in Hollywood that were influencers, and ended up getting Krav Maga featured in a couple of feature films. One of the early ones was Enough with J-Lo. Yeah. And that kind of took Krav Maga out, in the public eye. He was very good at getting press and getting public relations. He was good at public relations. And they also had very high standards for their instructor courses, and they developed a bit of a mythology around their approach to teaching Krav Maga. Now, what's interesting to me, and this is just a side note, but from what I understand, I've never trained in Israel, but having trained with several people who do go to Israel on a regular basis to train, they say that the training courses there for instructors are very different for civilian instructors. And they're not that kind of hardcore military training. If you took a military Krav Maga course in the military, yes, it would be, very hardcore. But the civilian training is more focused on how to teach and how to teach safely.
Right.
So it's interesting that they kind of created their own sort of methodology that built this sort of mythology around Krav Maga in the United States. So, overall, I think he had a very strong strategy for promoting the martial art or the self-defense style of Krav Maga, and making it appear as though to the public that it was kind of this ultimate military martial art hand-to-hand method. And having practiced Krav Maga for 8 years and having practiced martial arts for 30 years before that, I can tell you it's not the ultimate martial art, but it has there's some very good things about it. The reason why I continue to train it and teach it. But, obviously it's not the ultimate martial art. There's no ultimate martial art. But we can say for a fact that Darren Levine and his organization were really, really good at promoting Krav Maga.
I remember seeing them at the early NAPMA conventions.
Yep.
And there was no JKD representation there.
Yeah. And well, let's think about this too. Okay. They presented a unified front. Okay. They had a very specific uniforms, very specific culture. When you saw somebody doing Krav Maga, you understood that it was Krav Maga because they all dressed the same, they looked the same, they trained the same, the techniques were the same. People that have come out of that organization, that have started their own martial arts associations, their own Krav Maga associations. John Whitman being probably the most notable. They have continued to turn out great black belts and great instructors, and continue to be successful even after breaking away from them. Ernie Kirk's another one. That's who my friend Tom Whitaker trains with. And these guys, they're tough individuals. They're great martial artists. They're very well-rounded martial artists. But if you look at how they dress, how they conduct themselves, the way they do technique, their whole culture surrounding Krav Maga, it is still a very unified culture that came out of that initial organization and Darren Levine's direction. And you got to hand it to him because, he created something almost, not the system itself, but he created a culture and, kind of a phenomena, whole cloth from something that didn't exist before. And it's very interesting. And I think Jeet Kune could learn a lot from that.
What's become, when we finish here, I'm going to study this recording, right? Because no, seriously, because one of my goals is, like I've said before, we're never going to have a unified Jeet Kune front, as in unified, as in becoming one. We're never going to have that, but we can have a more united front. And I think one of the reasons why we haven't had that so far is because there are a lot of little boys in Jeet Kune, not enough men, but a lot of little boys, right? So that's one of the things. But I wanted to ask you this also. In the martial arts world, I mean, you are a brilliant observer of, I just realized something. You are the Mark Levin of martial arts. I just realized that. You're the Mark Levin of martial arts. So I shall now call you the Great One, right?
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'll take that.
Right, okay. So from your observation, what has become or is becoming obsolete in the martial arts world? Can you think of anything?
Oh, man.
Because you said earlier, there's still people out there like Tsutomu Oshima. I am sure he still has a great school and a great organization, right? If Hidetaka Nishiyama and who's the guy out of Philadelphia, Okazaki, Tsutomu Okazaki, whatever. I'm sure those guys still have great schools teaching traditional Shotokan karate, right? But is there anything that has become obsolete over the decades?
I would say what's become obsolete is the public perception that you go to a karate school to learn self-defense. You know, I think the only people who think that you go to a karate or taekwondo or traditional kung fu school to learn self-defense are people that are practicing those systems. I think it's pretty much universally understood and held by most people in the public sector that those aren't places that you go to learn self-defense. Those are places that you go to learn moving meditation or to practice and to practice a discipline that is an historical anachronism, in order to to enrich yourself culturally
Right.
by practicing something that is a cultural phenomenon or a cultural treasure in some cases,
Hmm.
but I think that perception in the public consciousness is no more.
Okay. First, let's talk a little bit about first steps. So a guy has this desire to open up a school. What's the first step that that you think he should take?
Okay, are we talking physical steps or mental preparation, like mental
Um,
preparation?
that's a good one. Can we do both?
Yeah. Okay.
Physical first,
So,
physical first, and then psychological preparation.
okay. So first thing they need to do is they need to get students in a part-time location and develop cash flow, build cash flow. The worst thing that somebody can do is to go out and take a loan out and start a school from scratch, on borrowed money or on money that they've taken out of their own savings or what have you, their 401k account or whatever, and start with no students. Because until you have proof of concept, you really don't have any business renting a full-time location, leasing a full-time location, starting a full-time business. Okay. As far as knowledge preparation or mental preparation goes, they need to learn marketing. The first thing you need to learn is marketing and then sales. So there are 5 steps that I take all my clients through when they learn my system for running a successful small studio, right? And step 0 is actually reducing overhead. Okay, it's getting a handle on overhead and understanding budgeting and getting a handle on overhead. So if somebody has an existing studio, that's the first thing we work on.
Mm-hmm.
But then we work on marketing, because marketing and sales are what generate cash flow. And I know marketing and sales can be dirty words. They can appear as dirty words to people in the martial arts industry because they've associated marketing and sales with the sleazy kind of stuff they've seen in the industry for so long. Kind of those sleazy tactics. But you can't get around knowing how to market and how to sell if you're going to run a business. It's like, okay, so my friend Tom Whitaker, that guy he's just built the school back up to about 300 or more students since the pandemic, right? And they were, like everybody else, hurting during the pandemic, so they've bounced back. His whole family does martial arts. He trains fighters. His son's a world champion kickboxer, but yet he still has 300 students training in his studio every week, and the majority of them are families and children. Okay, so serious martial artist, but serious business owner as well. And one thing he told me, he said, Mike, he said, think about the way most of these guys run their studios. They'll go days without enrolling anybody and think it's okay. He's like, what business do you know of out there besides a martial arts studio that thinks it's okay to go days at a time without making a sale? Think about it. And yet we as martial arts instructors, it's like, a guy might go all week or for weeks not enrolling somebody and be like, okay, I still got people on the floor and they're paying me monthly, so it's no big deal.
But how come people have evolved in their martial arts thinking, but never evolved in the martial arts business thinking?
So once again, it goes back to the fact that a lot of people, well, let me say this, a lot of people still feel guilty about making money, getting paid for what they do. Because for many people, I'll say that, and this was true for me in the beginning too. It's just that I grew up poor and it was easy for me to get over it. But, they feel guilty about asking or accepting money for what they do and getting paid well for what they do, because for a lot of us, martial arts is almost like a religion. It's almost like a religious or something spiritual to us. It's something sacred. Right. And so, how do you get paid? How do you feel comfortable getting paid well for doing something that's sacred to you? For sharing something that you would share anyway, right? Okay. So there's a lot of mindset training that has to go on. There's a lot of I guess you could say personal development that needs to happen internally for a martial artist to get to the point to where they realize that what they're sharing with other people is something that is valuable and that it has worth, it has material worth to other people. And
Yeah.
so it's okay to get paid well for it, you know? And so I think that because of that, because a lot of people still feel guilty about getting paid well for sharing what they know with others, that they kind of ignore the business side of it. And then let's also face it too, business side's boring, you
Yeah.
know? Tracking stats and numbers and doing bookkeeping and all that's some boring shit. But you know, it's what pays the bills, and it's what's going to keep your doors open, and it's what is going to allow you to teach the students that you want to teach for years to come over the long term and leave a legacy for your students.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you think Bruce Lee was a good marketer?
Oh yeah.
See,
Yes. Oh my.
I have tried to teach people
Yeah.
that now
Yeah.
they will listen.
Yeah, well, you know, let's look at it this way. And I mentioned this in one of my in the first book in Small District Big Profits. I'm trying to remember exactly what it worked out to because I had to use like the inflation calculator. But it was something like Bruce Lee was charging something like $1,200 an hour for private lessons. The equivalent today of what would have been, it's probably more like $1,500 an hour.
It was $275 an hour, and then
It
it
was-
was $275 an hour and $1,000 per week for overseas stuff. Or some,
Yeah.
or 1,000 for 10 classes or something like that.
Yeah. Find me a martial arts instructor running a full-time studio now, even a world champion who charges $275 an hour.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people, they won't do it. People don't believe in charging what they're worth, you know? When I tell people that, like, for example, during the pandemic, I didn't want to quit teaching. I wanted to keep teaching. So when they told us we had to shut down, I had to shut down my classes. And, you know, I just approached my students. I said, who wants to keep training? And you know, my garage, you know, every house I've had, to my wife's great discontent, the garage has been set up as a dojo, right? As a studio. And so I already had, you know, mats and everything, and the place was, you know, so I just started teaching people in small group private lessons and in one-on-one private lessons in my garage, and did that all the way through the pandemic. And you know, the thing is that, you know, I'm charging like, you know, $400 a month for small group private lessons, you know, and I'm charging $1,000 a month for one-on-one lessons, you know, and they have to pay that monthly, and that's for a certain number of lessons every week, and it's just like they're paying it just like a membership. And you know, I had people like not even talking to me during the pandemic, but going on my website, finding the checkout page, and paying that money to me sight unseen, and then calling me and saying, "Hey, I just signed up. How do I get to your place?" You know, and it's partially because of the pandemic, because people wanted things to do. You know, they wanted to get back out of their homes, and they wanted physical things to do. And they're like, oh my gosh, somebody's doing this. Thank goodness, you know, I'm going to train with that person. But the other thing is that there's an interesting psychological phenomenon that happens, that the more you charge, the more people value you. Now you have to back that up. You have to be able to back that up in real time, right? Like if I'm charging, you know, 25, 50% more than all my competitors for private lessons or for group classes or whatever, I've got to be able to back that up in real time and show people when they actually come to my studio actual worth, actual value, right? But on the front end, if you're cheap, if you're the cheapest person in town, everybody's going to see you as the cheapest person in town. They're going to look at you and they're going to be like, you know, this guy's charging $50 a month. This school over here is charging 150. Why is he charging $50 a month? He must not be that good, or she must not be that good.
You know where I just saw two things outside of the martial art world that were perfect business lessons. Do you watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
Haven't seen it yet. My wife was telling me about it.
Okay, so this was season 4, the last episode of season 4. Lenny Bruce has just performed at Carnegie Hall, and then he's kind of like her mentor. And they walk out on stage, the crowd is all gone. And they met in jail because they both got arrested, right? Because this is New York, 1950s. So they both got arrested. So and he says to her, if they see you opening for Tony Bennett at the Copa, they believe you are supposed to be there. If they see you in jail, they also believe you deserve to be there. Right? So it's what you're saying. The other thing I saw, Tucker Carlson was interviewing Kid Rock, and he said to Kid Rock, do you know who your fans are? And Kid Rock goes, yes, they're this, and this. 4 or 5 things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely knows who his customers are.
Mm-hmm.
A few minutes later, Tucker says, do you know how to reach them? He's like, yes, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I'm going, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Ask the typical martial arts instructor out there to define their ideal client, like their target market, their ideal client. And most martial arts instructors have never gone through the process of developing an avatar for their ideal client. And that's the first thing that you learn when you study marketing. You know, I took business classes when I was finishing up my undergraduate degree, and nearly got a second major in business when I was finishing up my undergraduate degree in health sciences.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things you learn in marketing is that you have to develop an avatar for your ideal client, for your target market. Right. And that means that you develop this person, this persona that you define for all their demographics, everything demographically about them that you want for that ideal client. And I know it's become, kind of unacceptable for us to define people by demographics, right? Because we're not supposed to put people in boxes and so forth. We're not supposed to use labels, but functionally speaking and practically speaking, you have to know who you're going after as far as your market goes, you know? Mm-hmm. And if you haven't spent the time to sit down and think, who is the ideal client? What type of client, what does that client look like that I want populating my studio, my classes? Then you're going to have a really hard time in your marketing because you're not going to know how to market. You're not going to know what to say or who to say it to. Yeah. So yeah, that Kid Rock, illustration. I mean, that's brilliant. You know, there's a guy who understands who he is, mm-hmm. What he stands for, what he delivers, and who he delivers it to. Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that. And that's probably why he's still successful.
So you think that could be one of the most common mistakes that people make, and that's why they fail in martial arts business? They don't identify who their dream customer could be.
Well, I think that the biggest mistake that martial artists make is not sitting down and thinking about things from the customer's perspective. Uh-huh. That just assuming that their perspective is the perspective. And years ago, John Graydon talked about this years ago. You've been around long enough to know who John Graydon is, to remember NATMA. Way back in the day, National Association of Professional Martial Artists was John Graydon.
He's been on my show.
Yeah, John's a great guy.
I should bitch at you and tell people I wanted you on my show years ago.
Yeah, I've been focusing on other pursuits, so But anyway, you probably remember John talking about this years ago in one of his books where he talked about people having black belt eyes. Yeah. And how they, black belts see things through their own eyes, and they have a really hard time, flipping the script and seeing things from the other perspective. Right. And it hurts a lot of martial arts instructors because, we have a tendency to do that because, let's face it, martial artists have big egos. We tend to we talk about destroying the ego and all that Zen stuff, but in reality, most of us have really huge egos. And, my wife, not being a martial artist, but seeing the martial arts world from the outside in, but up close for many decades, over 2 decades now. She says it all the time. She's like, man, you guys are egotistical people, and not so many words, but that's what she says. It's her opinion. Yeah. She's right. And so we have a hard time, admitting that we're wrong, or that, that maybe our perspective isn't the only perspective.
Yeah. So. My good friend, student, and dentist of 30 years was telling me just today at lunch that, having a woman by your side will keep you on track. Right? Because they'll let you know what's what. Okay, so I just got a couple more questions for you. Sure. But okay, we usually do this when we're wrapping up. But can we talk about what brought you here today?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So, you invited me on the show, so that's one thing, and I'd been ducking you for a few weeks. But I just revised my marketing course for martial arts school owners. It's probably the last course that I'll write. I'm actually in the process. I've been writing fiction as well as nonfiction for the last 10 or 12 years, and it's really where my heart is right now. I still teach martial arts. I still do martial arts, but I don't run schools full time. I don't even consult full time because most of where my focus is right now is on writing fiction. And some people know this, some people may not, but I announced it publicly, so I may as well say it. I was recently diagnosed with lung cancer, and it's not the nice kind of lung cancer; it's the aggressive kind. So right now I'm thinking, okay, I need to think about what I really want to do from here on out, and it's things like spending time with my son and my wife, and writing, and so I'm trying to focus on the things that really, that I want to do for the next, 5, 10 years or whatever.
Mhm.
So, I'm transitioning out of doing consulting and out of teaching full time. And one of the things that I'm doing in that process is revising all my materials and making sure that my materials are up to date and so forth. And I just revised this course and I just released it. And if people are interested in checking it out, they can go to martialartsmarketingbook.com. Even though it's not a book now, it's an online course because, times have changed since I released it,
Right.
but they can go to martialartsmarketingbook.com and find out all about it and so forth. And that's pretty much why I'm here today. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be sure to put that in the show notes
Thanks,
and all that stuff. And also, I suggest that people go to, if you're a Kindle fan, go to Amazon.com. Go to Michael Massie's book. I didn't remember about the fitness books, but there's like 4 fitness
Oh
books
yeah, I
out
got a
too.
couple of those out there too. Yeah.
You
So,
remember?
what's funny is that carb cycling book that I wrote, I'm actually really proud of that one. The other book that I wrote, which is like the Simple Diet or something like that,
Uh-huh.
Simplified Diet, that one was the program that I used to teach my personal training clients because I always did personal training for like 2 decades. I did personal training along with teaching martial arts, right?
Okay.
Certified personal trainer, all that stuff. So that was just the program, the basic program that I taught my clients, and I put it in book form. And it's really good material, but people don't like it because it's not unique, But that carb cycling book is really good information. And I was actually the first person to write an ebook on Amazon about carb cycling and about a carb cycling diet. And then what happened is it started to gain traction. I was starting to sell more books than people like celebrity trainers like Harley Pasternak and people like that. So these scammers, there's people on that will just take your books and they'll just run it through
Yeah.
Google, translate back and forth, and then
Yep.
they'll publish it as their own stuff.
Yep.
And I had like 24 people publish books that were just like mine, and it kind of tanked my sales. But I tell you, that carb cycling book's actually a really good book. It has some good information.
Yeah. That Amazon thing happened to Chris Kent. Did you hear that?
No,
Yeah, I think I forget which book it was. I think it's the Think Like Bruce Lee book that happened to him. All right, so yeah, so martialartsmarketingbook.com
Yep.
and then Amazon Kindle, Michael Massey. What are there any big opportunities left in the martial art world?
I think there's tons of opportunities for anybody who is teaching solid martial arts that wants to work hard and own a martial arts studio. One of the things you got to understand about this industry is that we have unique opportunities in this industry. And I think martial artists typically are unaware, in my opinion, the people I've worked with over the years, they're typically unaware of the opportunities that we have. Because if you were to go out, let's say, for example, you wanted to purchase a franchise, right? The typical restaurant franchise that you're going to buy, you're looking at a minimum of like, $250,000, $300,000 investment, capital investment, and so forth. Franchise fees, you're going to be paying like 7 to whatever percent to the head company, every month off the top, not off the bottom of your profits, not off your net, but off your gross, and so on and so forth. Let's say, for example, you wanted to open up a gym. You're looking at $150,000 worth of capital investment just to buy the equipment alone. Let's say you were going to open up your own restaurant and not open up a franchise. The amount of money that you have to spend to build out the interior of a restaurant, to buy all the equipment for the kitchen and to fit everything out, to get all the stuff that you need to install in it, all the fire suppression stuff and everything. I mean, it's an insane amount of money. You want to open up a martial arts studio, all you got to do is find a 2,000 square foot space with a bathroom and an office, throw some mats in there and paint it, and you're good to go. I've opened up martial arts studios for under $5,000, and the thing is that our overhead costs are really low because, you don't have, number one, you don't have the capital investment. So you don't have, big payments on, a bank note every month if you open it up right. You don't have to have a lot of overhead in payroll because you don't have a bunch of people working for you. Typically, it's just you and 1 or 2 other employees in a small martial arts studio, and so since payroll is usually your second greatest or your greatest expense. You don't have that. So the profit margins in a martial arts studio can actually be really high if you run it right.
Yeah.
And I think there's still tremendous opportunity for people out there that want to run small boutique martial arts studios. And to me, that's the best way to do it. I'm not knocking any other way to do it, but I think it's the best way, especially if you're the type of person who wants to be on the floor every day, touching hands with your students.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's a tremendous opportunity there. Tremendous.
All right. Okay. Can you, I just want to make sure, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Your video's frozen, but I can still hear you.
Okay. So, all right. So, you know what? I'm just going to leave it like that and just ask you this. Let's finish this up. Final thoughts. Michael Massie, final thoughts for motivating martial artists. Do you like the alliteration there? Michael Massie, final thoughts for because I want you and Carlos. I want you and Carlos to be proud of me and my copywriting skills.
That's awesome. Carlos is a great guy, man. He's awesome. He's a great guy. Here's what I want to tell you. Okay, obviously, over the last couple of months, I have had a tectonic shift in how I think and approach life. Simply because, as martial artists, we always talk about kind of the old samurai, philosophy, axiom, whatever you want to call it, of thinking about your own death, considering your own death. But none of us ever think about dying. And I've had to think about that a lot over the last couple of months. Yeah. And I will tell everyone out there that my message to you is that even though it sounds cliche, every day really is a gift. And you are given a gift every single day that you wake up, that you get out of bed, that your feet hit the floor next to your bed. Don't waste it. Get out there, every single day, attack the day, seize the day, and as if it were your last. Because when you're faced with potentially having a limited amount of time left, everything changes for you, and everything becomes, much more poignant and, much more valuable and much more precious. So don't waste your time, spend it wisely and pursue the things that you want to do, pursue your dreams, because they're not going to pursue themselves. And you don't know. I mean, you might not have all the time that you think you have. So pursue your dreams as if you've got, let's say, 6 months or a year, and chase your dreams with that in mind, with that mentality, and nothing will stop you. All right. So even though I'm frozen from the frozen depths of Miami, Florida, Michael Massie, thank you so much for finally making it to the Jeet Kune Dallas. I really, really appreciate it. And now everybody knows why. Like I said in the beginning, I consider you one of the most intelligent and one of the kindest human beings that I have come across inside and outside of martial arts. So thank you once again, sir. I appreciate it. And I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me, Dwight. And I just want to say, I have known you for years. You were one of my first clients, or one of my first customers, I should say. And, it always pleases me to see customers that I had back in the early days that are still doing well and still teaching martial arts and still out there impacting lives. So congratulations. Thank you so much, sir. You take care and keep in touch. Let me know what if there's anything else I can do for you. Yes, sir. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you. Take care, man. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So I will have to fix some of this in post, and I'll send you a copy of it once I have everything finished up. Okay. I'm ripping off Joe Rogan again, when he used to have I think he had Rosa Parks and Jimi Hendrix. So when I started doing this, I think so. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. All right, man. Well, listen, have a great weekend, and we'll talk again. Okay. All right. Sure thing.
All right, let me refresh myself here and all right. So apparently we had terrific internet connection today. No, except that I dropped out of Facebook a few minutes ago, apparently. And well, you know, these things happen. If something about, I don't know if we violated some Facebook terms of service or whatever. Anyhow, so that was Mike Massie. Like I told you, he's one of the greatest guys, that I've come across. So you heard where to check him out. Go to Amazon.com and look at the Michael Massie author book. In fact, let me see if I can. No, it's not there, right? Anyhow, that's what his Amazon Kindle stuff looks like. So you guys can check that out there. And also martialartsmarketingbook.com is where you can get stuff from him as well. Right. Okay. So that's it for today. Feel free, share, like, comment, ask questions if you want. I'll review after post and everything. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D Woods. Coming up tomorrow, our regularly scheduled Jeet Kune Dialogues episode with Ryan Teal of MKG Seattle. So that'll be tomorrow, Saturday at 6 p.m. the normal time. So hopefully some of you can hang out with us then. If not, I'll see you back here next week for the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast on Wednesday. Until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebels, signing off. You guys have a great weekend. Hope everything's normalizing itself where you are. And we'll talk soon. Take care.